Wow. Adroll came in and totally bursted up my own stream. Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. And right now, I don't see the little light on my camera saying that's recording, so I'm not quite sure if you're hearing me. All right, there we go. All right, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic creator, writer, illustrator, self-publisher. If you'd like to support this channel for as little as $2 a month, you can go to patreon.com/Jeremy. You'll get early access to my blog posts behind the scenes of my creative work. At the $5 tier, you'll get a bonus live stream once a month. If you'd like to sample some of my comics and see the type of work I'm making, you can go to comics.jeremy.net. And if you would like to buy some of my comics, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. So, let us get started. I am wrapping up Morningstar issue 7. So, I have rough pencils for the cover. And let me just change the opacity so you can see what I started with. There's a little extra bleed here. The actual artboard is different than the proportions for the template that I have that I lay out my comics in. Anyway, so this is the image. It's Raphael staring through a noose. Things aren't looking great for him. And one of the things that I wanted to try is I've done a variety of different color schemes for each color. Some were more like, I was trying to key each cover to a different color. So one was reddish, some blue, some yellow, and the only one I haven't really done yet is green. Like there's a bit of foresty green in Remiel's cover where she's holding a shotgun. She's like, dripping wet and frightened. But I hadn't really done a very green one. So I went in and I started doing some gray toning. However, or not gray toning, but actually, well, I'll show you a little bit because the one thing that I have learned, well, no, this is the problem I'm having, is that I haven't learned a damn thing. For as many times as I have done colored pieces, and I always tell myself I need to do color thumbnails before I do it, before I start a color piece. I didn't do color thumbnails for this one, and I should have. So what you're going to see me working on today is doing a few color thumbnails to work out how I want the color to look. The way I had set up that the black and white piece of him staring through the noose, it looked fine. There wasn't anything wrong with it. That said, when I decided I wanted to do a gray toned, when I wanted to do a green, a cover that had more of a green cast to it, I had started with just doing it purely just light greens and dark greens and kind of blocking in the colors. And then I figured I would kind of go in and work out the skin tones afterwards. But that just felt weird to me. Like the lighting's going to come out really weird and really off if I'm trying to color skin tones into this. I really kind of had to do the skin tones, and then knowing that I thought, well, if it's going to be green, then my light source would be maybe yellow. And as I got to this point, I realized, wow, this is going to be really garish. So I went back, and that's when I got up to the level that you saw when I had this image open. So just kind of painting him as I see him, and then just going and doing all of the greens with the lighting. But the more that I looked at this, it didn't feel westerny. So there's just something about it that was off. And I realized, well, first things first, I need to go and grab some reference. So I went and I grabbed I have a book of the Western painter Frederick Remington, and I was looking through a bunch of his pieces. I don't have any up on the screen to show you in terms of reference, but just looking at sort of like the pale yellows, the pale dusty yellows, and the bird's egg blues that are just in his skies and his ground, that felt much more like, it felt very westerny. the color palette I have here, and I'm sure there are images, I could work out a way to have a green cast and a green tone to it and still have it have the feel that I want, but it wasn't coming out in the images that I had drawn so far, like just so far in terms of the colors I laid in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a new layer, and I'm just gonna fill it with gray and draw some thumbnails on top. Actually, let me put another gray layer because I'm gonna color into it, erase into it, kind of pull stuff in and out. Let's drop sort of a mild 40% gray in here. And I guess now it's just a matter of me really saying, well, what is the tone that I want? I really need to figure that out. And it's a little embarrassing to be figuring this out live, but that's kind of one of the things I go for this YouTube channel. I feel like it's more interesting to show you how I get myself into a hole and how I have to dig myself out than to just make it look like, oh, voila, I just follow these steps and the pieces come out perfect. It would be fantastic if that was all it took for me to make a good piece of artwork, was just follow these steps and everything will be fine. But that's rarely the case. More often than not, I'm doing like 2 steps forward, 100 steps back. So let's just start with a pale yellow. Let's see. Yeah, let's move this a little bit more orangey. Let's see. I'm tempted to use a green in there, but I think instead what I'll do is I'll keep it for now in this monochromatic look, and I'll just gray it down. So I'll start with this. Even this, drop the opacity down to about 40. And I'll tell you, one of the humbling things is when I think that I know something or understand how to do something, and then I realize, oh, I haven't been doing what I should be doing all along. And what I'm specifically referring to is that I have not been doing enough color pieces. A lot of times when I share my figure drawing work, I harp on the fact that for figure drawing, I've been, doing it for a number of years, and I share the work that I do in class. And the reason why I feel it's important is because I would not be able to draw my comics as well as I want to if I weren't taking these classes. I can definitely see that I've made a large amount of artistic growth. I mean, I still, again, have a long way to go, but I've made a lot of growth just in the time that I've been taking classes. And I no longer look at doing figure drawing as a skill to be learned. It's a muscle to be exercised. The more I do it, the better I get at it. The less I do it, the weaker I get at it. But there's never a point where I know everything and I'm like, oh, I've got this. I've mastered this. And you know what? As a side note, I know that I'm drawing kind of small. To be honest, I'm only having it this big for your guys, as you watching it, for your benefit, so you can see what I'm drawing. Because realistically, when I'm working on thumbnails, I like to work tiny. And if anything, I would drop this down a little bit. I would normally have this maybe this small and really be drawing like a postage size image. And if you're, first off, this is pretty small on a computer screen. If you were watching this on your phone or a mobile device, you're like, I can't see anything. So I will bring it back up a little bit. But just letting you know the reason why I'm not drawing at like full screen or having this image, you know, very large like this. It's because I don't want to get lost in detail. Right now, I just want to think about the major shapes and composition. So, I was saying, excuse me, figure drawing has become something that I realize I need to constantly do to work and improve and stay up on. And I also mentioned that when I started gray toning this issue, I kind of had to reteach myself what I was doing, because it's been, you know, this issue took me a lot longer than usual, and it's been so long since I was gray toning an issue, I kind of had to reteach myself, relearn relearn how to create the effects that I want to create. And then when I started working on this cover, and I got a day or two into it, and I realized how much trouble I was having, I was like, oh, huh, I don't do color pieces nearly enough. I maybe do, originally, I had tried to do, I want to say, well, my original goal was to try and do a color piece once a month. And then I would have like 12 new prints, art prints of my work per year. And that just did not, that just didn't work out. I just was losing too much time that I needed to make comics. So in the end, I was doing fewer and fewer prints, but that meant I was doing less and less color work and less color thumbnails. And I always say, if you do a particular activity for a very long time, then that muscle memory does eventually get baked into the point where you're not starting from scratch. Like with the gray tones, I'm not starting from scratch. I fumbled around for a few days, and then I got to work, and I was like, oh, okay, it's all coming back to me, and I made little notes to myself so that if I'm in that position again, it'll all sort of snap back. But when it came to doing color, I have not maintained that level of discipline. Let me turn this off for a second. Just looking at the composition there. So I have not maintained my proper discipline in terms of studying color and doing color work consistently. And I can see it biting me in the ass. It is literally chewing on my ass right now. You're watching my ass get chewed up. That's what's happening. I'm like the chief in Beverly Hills Cop. I still got a little ass left. But my point being is that now I'm realizing that as much as I put a focus on black and white work for my comics, I put my energy towards gray toning and doing my composition and having my inks be strong, I'm still going to have to color my covers. And if that's the case, then I need to get stronger at doing color, just for that sake. Now, if I were publishing 12 issues a year, then I'd be doing at least one color piece a month. So that would be resolving that problem. Would just be to draw the whole issue faster, so I'm not going so long without color pieces. We know that that's not going to happen right now. Someday, yes, it's not going to happen right now. So in the interim, in this day-to-day that I have to make my comics in whatever spare time I have, and gray tone them and ink them and letter them and do all of that work, I'm going to have to put in some time. I'm going to have to figure out time in my schedule to just do color studies. Maybe it's just color studies for the sake of covers. In theory, I could have been, the whole time I was thumbnailing this issue and doing gray tones and doing my my inks, I could have sat down for like an hour a week, as little as that, and said, all right, I'm just going to do a quick color study on the cover. And then the next week I do another color study on the cover. And then the next week I do a color study on the cover. And if it takes me like 3 or 4 months to finish an issue, by the time I'm done, hopefully I've done enough cover studies that I have nailed that cover, and I've sort of kept that muscle for studying color limber. Or maybe develop it to the point where it doesn't feel like I'm starting from scratch each time I'm coloring a piece. I mean, I would like to think I would also fit in the time to do like color master studies. For instance, considering I'm doing a Western, it would have been really good to do a master study from Remington. I've also got a great book of John Singer Sargent that my wife got me for. Did she get it for Christmas last year? Did she get it for my birthday? I can't remember. Point is, it's a great book. I got it specifically to do master studies from, and I've opened that book like twice. And yes, that's true. It's been because I'm trying to pick up the pace on Morningstar and not take so long to get the whole series done. But I do, in fact, want to start doing more color master studies. So, I mean, I want to do black and white master studies to work on composition and values. I want to do color ones just to, I mean, for the color ones, hell, if I'm just working on color study, I don't really need to even do that detailed of a drawing. It can just be me really just doing blobs that are compositional and just looking at how the colors interact with each other. It almost would become like an abstract piece. But that's you know, another thing that I want to add to my to-do list for the future. Making sure that I'm studying color on a regular basis, the same way that I study, you know, anatomy with figure drawing class. I made that sound like I was going to rattle off a list of things that I study, and I have a list, but I've not been studying those things with any type of regularity. Not lately, anyway. I mean, on one hand, I do feel like, you know, I don't want to kill myself as I make these comics. I want to be able to live like a normal human being, go to bed at a reasonable hour, get the right amount of health and get the right amount of exercise, and do other things to recharge the creative batteries. You know, actually reading books. Okay. So what I'm thinking so far. See, this is a big problem. The fact that I didn't even figure out whether I wanted this to be front lit or backlit. And the fact that I'm having things getting more and more shadowy as I move forward means we're leaning more into a backlit color composition. And I gotta tell you, right now this composition is leaning much more in my mind. I want to see it go purple as opposed to going green like I had originally intended. So let's see what happens if I, well, first off, let's add a little bit more orange just so that this is a little bit more saturated. Just a hair. One of the things I've been trying to do, and again, this is because I haven't been doing enough color work, but instead of thinking of stuff in terms of lighter and darker, you know, with lighter colors coming forward and darker colors receding, I'm trying to think in terms of warmer and cooler. And that was my phone. Put this on Do Not Disturb. It was already on Do Not Disturb. That ring shouldn't have come through. That's odd. Never mind. Stay focused on this. Yeah, so that's too far off. Actually, what I want to do is keep it. If I wanted to do our colors around the edge, that'll probably add a little bit more orange. But what I want to do right now is turn up the saturation and then just have the area, see that's too saturated. I wanted to, well, I can drop the opacity and kind of work it in. What I wanted to do was make it so that the color I'm using just around the character's head, around Raphael's head, is to have that be a little bit more saturated, just to draw the eye in. The idea is to have things around my focal point be saturated and warmer, and then as things move away from that, to desaturate and cool them down. And I am not, as I've spoken of my need to study color more, I'm not a master of warms and cools. It's more of something that I've picked up from watching other painters work, you know, both watching in real time, going to workshops, and then just, you know, watching other people's YouTube channels. As much as you're watching me here, I watch other people and try to learn from how they work. Now here around the outside, this is where I want to shift it a little bit more orangey, but I also want it to, I want to start by going back to that desaturated pale color, the pale yellow, and then from here, shift it a little more. Even that's too much. Well, wait. First, I want to get this color, and then from this color, I can use the color picker, and I just want to be able to visually compare. Just slightly more red, slightly orangish. Just to cool off the areas towards the outside. Now the real question, do I want to go strong backlight? Let's see. I mean, the whole point of doing this is to experiment. You know, that's the point of thumbnails, is to play around before I'm doing my actual finished final piece and figure out what I want this to look like. Oh, I see some people are popping into the chat. I see Pavel is here. Hello, how you doing, Pavel? Gamer Menace is there. Thanks for stopping by. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Just going through, and I'm doing some color thumbnails. For anyone who showed up late, I was doing gray tones, or not gray tones, I was coloring. This is the cover from Morningstar issue 7. And let me turn the pencil layer on. There's a noose that Raphael is looking through. But I just wasn't happy with what I was doing color-wise. So I just thought, let me go back and do some thumbnails and just work out what I really want this to be color-wise. And this purple might be too purple. I may need to shift this to something more blue. Trying to fight off a yawn, so I haven't had enough coffee. Well, I haven't had any coffee this morning. Let's see. Pavel's doing well. I see Tim Hall is in the chat. Tim says, thank you for your consistent and extensive content. Well, you're more than welcome. Thank you for showing up and watching. I'm glad you're enjoying these, and I hope that they're helpful to you. It's funny, I was talking to my wife this morning, and I was we were talking last night at dinner, and I was figuring out what things I wanted to accomplish today. And I, just mentioned the fact I didn't know if I was going to have time to get some exercise in, and I was going to, want to make sure I was already thinking ahead of time, even while we were at dinner trying to relax. I was thinking about, well, I got to do the live stream at 11. I've got to, get these other things done. She's all, well, can you skip a week? And I'm all, I could. I don't want to. Because I feel like that's, they say that that's one of the best ways to build up a YouTube channel is to be around consistently. So I am making an effort to be here every week. There's definitely going to be times, like if I've got a convention where I'm going to miss doing a show, but doing a live stream. But for the most part, I picked a time that I was pretty sure I would be able to stick to. And that has made a huge difference. Trying to do one consistent time, have one day of the week where things just aren't super crazy and I can actually show up and be here and talk with you guys and share what I'm doing. And this is one of those things that I find interesting where I'm trying something out and I really don't know how it's going to work. Like as I'm doing this and painting in the blue over the purple, I'm like, I honestly, I don't have a picture in my head of whether this is exactly what I want. I'm just sort of trying it and seeing how it goes. And there's definitely a part of my brain that's just like, well, what if I decide I want to go? Well, I mean, I could just hit undo, or, I just realized I haven't hit save in a while. Just reverting to a previous version of the file, that always helps. Or just saving multiple versions, or collapsing a version. I've seen some people where they just will work in layers to a certain point, and then just collapse those layers and save them, or they'll save out a layer set that has some of the layers that they might need, so you can come back to it. I actually kind of like this with the blue on top of the purple. So I think that feels closer to what I had imagined. I'm gonna come back in with a little bit of red around the edge of the wings, but I think leaving some of that red out of the wings will help it separate somewhat from the figure. Because as I turn this off again and go back to the main figure, you know what? Let me put another gray on top of this. Turn that off. So when I originally drew this, I was consciously really thinking about the composition of the figure. I don't need these swatches up here. So even though the wings are obviously a separate form, I wanted to make it so that kind of the silhouette of the figure with the wings worked, and it would work in contrast to the silhouette of the noose that's above him. But I still feel like the way I've drawn it, when I'm doing the color, I do want you to get a sense of that these wings are coming off of him. And just with that strong silhouette, I feel like it's a subtle line. Because what I really want, what I really, really want, you know, at this point, I can, yeah, I might as well just leave it there so you can see it. So what I want is to continue that sense of an overall shape of the wings and the torso and head, but I do want there to be a little bit of differentiation just between the wings and the shoulders. And I think that will probably come from really just subtle lighting changes, because he's going to be wearing a white t-shirt, which, I mean, for the most part, who knows, the white t-shirt may end up looking very, very blue purple and just taking on this shadowy cast that I'm giving it. And I think I may end up just really warming up and going really, you know what, I may just keep the noose just gray, kind of a dusty gray. Go back up to the thumbnail layer. But yeah, I should have done this. I should have done maybe like 5 different color studies before I got around to starting. And I do that sometimes. I just get so comfortable with my process and I think, oh, I know what I'm doing, I've got this, and I just go. And then I back myself into a corner that's not what I wanted. I should have done a bunch of color studies and really figured out how I wanted this to work. I could have done them, what I like doing is doing them in watercolor. I've just got like a small watercolor kit and I'll just sit down with a sketchbook and slowly work in details and get the color schemes that I want. Go in here with a little bit of this purple. I mean, it kind of drives me nuts that I started this not even knowing where my light source was going to be. And the fact that as I'm drawing this now, I'm still sort of just figuring out what I want my light source to be. This really is something that at the compositional stage, I should have worked out. I know better, and I kind of feel like I share this with you so that you can avoid my mistakes. I get what I deserve for starting a color piece without working out my light sources beforehand. I mean, any piece, particularly, my comic pages, the composition should rest on me having the color source, the light source properly worked out. And the fact that I didn't, I'm like, well, that's what you get, So, didn't do my homework, and now I got to pay the piper. It's not really paying the piper. It's just doing the homework later instead of doing it up front. But this piece would be going much smoother if I were going up front. And see, I often joke both with my wife and with my coworkers about the reason why I tend to be pretty organized is because I'm thinking about future Jeremy, and what I'm saying or doing right now may not. I usually pretend that I am thinking about what my future self will be needing or requiring, or what problems the future version of myself will be dealing with. And when it comes to a piece like this, I mean, I could see myself like working on another cover or a cover for the next issue, and then somebody in the chat going, "Hey, where's future Jeremy's color study?" I'm like, "Yep, didn't do it." So hopefully making a mistake like this will encourage me to remember in the future. Like even now, will encourage me to remember in the future to go through the steps, do my color thumbnails. One of the things I wanted to start doing was to do color thumbnails before I actually even draw the cover itself. There's a Pixar book that's about like color scripts and color storytelling, and I realized that working out the color and how I want a cover to feel before I've even started drawing it would be extremely helpful in terms of getting me to the actual imagery. Like if I know the feel through color that I want this page to have, this story to have, this cover to have, working out those colors before I even know what the image is might actually be a logical way to get to the right imagery faster. And if I'm doing color, I'm working out my values and my lighting kind of at the same time. Oh, so sad to be doing art for so many years and still be making these mistakes that I feel are... I don't feel like they're beneath me. I just feel like I've learned enough that I should know. This is going to turn into the Jeremy beating himself up and berating himself live stream. Which I know, I normally tell people, hey, don't get upset about making mistakes. You learn from mistakes. And that is really how I feel. I feel like I'm learning from this. This is teaching me a lesson. But it's what it is it's teaching me a lesson that I should already know. And I've said that multiple times, but it's because I just keep saying, why did I not do color thumbnails? Why? I know better. Hit save. That's a good question to ask yourself when you're working on a piece. If you're working on a piece and you're starting to wonder if things are working, you're all, do I know better? Am I doing shit that I know? Am I skipping steps I know I should not skip? Because if you have to ask yourself that question, then you probably are. Yeah, see, this feels more Western to me than that green palette I was going for. One of the other challenges that I have with this issue, or what this cover, is that I'm going in and I'm doing I really don't know if I want this to be, if I want the highlight to be a color, or do I want it to be closer to white? Because this yellow of the background is already pretty bright. And I don't know if I want to go brighter than that and fight with the highlighter, whether I just want to go with a light, warmer color. I'm starting to get to the point now where I'm moving in and putting in more of the details that I would normally not do at a thumbnail level. But this is more of just me working out. Really the last thing I need to work out now is the lighting, the highlights. And what kind of lighting the noose is going to have. One of the things that I had wanted to do for this cover, and maybe might be part of the reason why I didn't necessarily jump into doing, even though I should have done color studies. No, this is even a reason why I should have done more color studies. What I wanted to do is make the covers from here on out, which really I've only got this cover and then the last cover left. And I suppose I'll have to draw another cover for the eventual second trade. But I really felt like the cover for the revised cover I did for Morningstar Volume 1 was kind of a breakthrough piece. I don't usually do digital paintings per se. I more sort of color my line artwork, more like, a traditional comic artist. Well, contemporary comic artist doing, digital colors and such. But I really sat down and tried to make a digital painting, and I was very happy with the results. And I said, all right, well, if this looks like what I really want the piece to feel like, then maybe I can try and add this aesthetic. My goal is that I'm using the line art as a guide to draw the figure and the details, but I'm going to try and not use any of that line work and do all of it with just color. And if there's a line, it's going to be a line because I'm going to do a hard edge between a transition of form, or a hard edge from one color to another instead of like softly blending it. But I'm going to try and really do it like a painting as opposed to coloring line art. And that cover took me a long ass time. I want to say that I probably spent like maybe 2 weeks on it. Now see, the challenge here is that I've set up this golden lighting on them. However, Raphael's hair is black. It's like jet black. And I need to figure out how I want that to shine through, or how you get that sense of what his hair color is. Underneath all that yellow. And I'm thinking, since I've got all these pale and light blues, that maybe doing a darker blue might be the way to get there. At this point, I think maybe I'm going to mess with the background a little bit and fill in a little bit more tone, and then I'm going to create a second layer on top just to sort of futz in because once I get into drawing the actual face, I'm going to make a lot of changes. I'm going to do a lot of back and forth and painting in and out, and I like what I've got going on at this level. So let me get a little bit more orange in this palette. Actually, I'm looking at this and I realize that if I push it towards orange, it's going to compete with the golden colors, the golden hues that are in the figure. So I'm actually going to go the other direction, and I'm going to push this. Well, let me set it back to the that pale yellow, and let's see what happens if I push this into the greens, which in a crazy way brings me back to sort of where I originally started. But the greens will cool it off a little bit. As I'm doing this, I'm already saying that I don't like the greens. Let's undo a little bit. Maybe going back to that red, but maybe graying that red a little bit so it's not as saturated. So let's try going down. And then I don't want to go too dark though, because right now it's a dark figure against a light background. It's so subtle. I could go the opposite, just go closer to white. It's counterintuitive, but you're here to experiment. You know, I just realized I've been going and just drawing and not even looking at the chat. So let me pop back in there, see what anybody has to say. Sorry, I got a little caught up in this and distracted. So, Tim says, I get it. I skip thumbnails too often. And let's see, there's somebody saying Dart Knight Plays. What is that? Ugly? Wow, he doesn't read the chat. Sad. This is the worst stream ever. Dislike the video. No, I don't mind. Do you have any questions? Pavel says he reads it. You know what, Pavel, don't get offended. Sometimes people are just trolling. But you know what, Dark Knight, if you got any questions, feel free to ask. Oh, and in terms of what is this, so I draw a comic book called Morningstar. It's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven told as a Western. And I'm working on a cover. And I did my line art. But I proceeded to doing a color scheme for this that was kind of green, only because green is the one color I haven't used in the other covers on the issues on this series so far. So I tried doing green. It was really coming out bad, so I realized I had to go back to doing thumbnails and refigure out what I want this piece to look like. So what I'm doing now is I'm just doing a small little color doodle to work out the color scheme. I'm not particularly sensitive to criticism, by the way. It's just one of those things. I mean, you know, not everyone's going to like everything that you do. And obviously, as I've mentioned, part of the whole reason for me even doing this thumbnail is that the piece was going in a bad direction, and I'm kind of trying to step backwards and figure out how to bring it closer to a direction that I'm happy with. Let's see here. Yeah, actually going with a little bit more light in the background as opposed to dark, seems like that might be working. So that seems pretty close to the color scheme I'm going to work on. So let's throw a little bit of detail in there with some darker blues. Let's see here. Let's turn up the saturation and make it a little darker. So Raphael's got an eye patch, so I can just real dark right there. When this goes into the light, I would obviously color that. Well, it's on a low opacity, so it should be fine. But I was going to say, normally I would shift that into maybe the yellow version of a darker yellow that kind of goes in combination with that, or fits in value-wise into the yellows instead of the cool colors I'm using. So here's where I'm thinking in terms of treating the hair like to, well, that's the other thing. It's, go back and actually look at his hair a little bit. It's kind of falling down. It's got bangs going over his forehead. So I think what I want is to have it just where his hair is crowning, to have the yellow show through. For some reason, I'm looking at this right now, and he's kind of reminding me of the governor from The Walking Dead, the TV governor. Yeah, I think that this might work. Yeah, that's a little closer. Pavel asked, he said, looking good, thank you, and asked how long I've been using Photoshop. Um, I have been using Photoshop for a very long time. I think I started using Photoshop back when I was in college. I worked on the school newspaper, and they had their own computer lab, so I would go in there and practice around, mess around with it. And then I got a design job out of college. I have been using Photoshop since I think Photoshop 3 or Photoshop 4 came out. Now I don't mean CS3 or CS4. I mean Photoshop 3. So this was like the late 90s when I first started using Photoshop. But even then, I'm trying to remember when the first Wacom tablets started coming out. Like not the Cintiqs, but just a plain like the like the Intuos, where it's just the pad that you're drawing on but with no screen. I want to say those probably didn't come out till way later, but I probably used my first Wacom, I want to say right around 2000-ish. I remember getting an iMac, like one of the like second generation iMacs. And at that time, I got that, I got a scanner, and I got a tablet. But I will tell you that for the longest time, I was really not very good at drawing on the Cintiq And right now, even as we speak, I feel like I can definitely draw better traditionally and scan stuff in. But the reason why I'm doing this on the screen instead of you watching me doing watercolor thumbnails is simply because this gives me more, like, being able to switch colors more quickly. It allows me to play with different options and variations easier digitally as opposed to traditionally. But yeah, I mean, I've been using Photoshop just for coloring pieces for, I guess, well over 15 years now, probably getting close to 20 years. And every once in a while, I would see people, I would work with art directors that were just phenomenal artists, period. And that's one of the reasons, like, when people talk about traditional versus digital, I personally don't feel like one's better than the other. But I feel like learning your actual draftsmanship is better to learn on digital. I mean, on traditional. Sorry, because when you start traditionally and then eventually move to digital, those skills carry over. And there was a guy I knew who was an art director of mine who could draw. He was doing like character animation, like model sheets, and he just could draw like nobody's business. Like it looked like some Alex Toth sketches, but drawn on a Cintiq. They were just amazing and simple, and they got down to the essence of the characters. And I was like, how is he doing that? What does he know about the computer that I don't know? And eventually I realized, no, it doesn't have anything to do with the computer. He's just a damn good artist. He knows how to draw really, really well. And I feel like I believe whatever skill I have drawing digitally now comes from the work that I've been putting in to getting better at traditional drawing. Now, at this point, I think I've got what I need in order to go in and finish the piece. I mean, I probably should mess with the lasso and figure out if I want what color type of accents. I'm imagining just going with just a bright yellow on there. But at this point, I feel like I have enough to get started. I don't want to get caught up too much in details because, as you can see, the perspective in my thumbnail is not the same as the perspective of the figure. The perspective of this figure, he's actually on the ground looking up at the noose. The noose is at a more oblique angle. It's more elliptical. Whereas this one, he feels almost a little bit more straightforward. And I could, like you're looking straight on towards him, and I could fix that, but I don't want to get too caught up in the details of messing and fixing this thumbnail because that isn't the point. The point is for me to work out what I was doing wrong with the color. And I feel like I'm getting close to that. Pavel says, I've just started learning Procreate on the iPad. I love Procreate. I had tried, was it Sketchbook Pro? And I think maybe one other program that I had used for drawing on the iPad. But when I discovered Procreate, I fell in love. That actually made me want to get rid of my current iPad and get an iPad Pro just so I could use the iPad Pencil. Because that really it kind of reminds me of Painter Classic. And one of the things with Corel Painter is that it's a great program, but there's so many options, it feels easy to get lost in the settings. And that's something I guess that it has in common with Photoshop. But I did feel like Procreate kind of cuts it down to what are the essentials you need to make art. And I've been really happy with it every time I've used it. He also says, have you seen Victor Bogdanovic? I'm not sure if that's how you say his name. But his pics on Twitter, he draws for DC, and he posts a pic of his digital and traditional pencils, and he says, good luck guessing which is which. I have not seen him. I'm not familiar with his work, but I will tell you that when this stream is over, I'm going to go check it out, because I always love to see what other artists are doing and what kind of cool process stuff. I'm into that. I'm feeling that. I mean, obviously, I guess if you're watching this channel, you kind of figured I'm into cool process stuff. Yeah, I think honestly, just keeping the lasso, the noose, this kind of sepia gray with just a little bit of yellow highlights. I think that will do the trick. Make it pop just where it needs to around his torso. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better about this piece now. And that's all it took. I mean, the fact that I was lost when, because I hadn't worked this out in my head, obviously, but the fact that I was kind of lost in this cover and saying, wow, this really isn't working, and I was trying other color schemes, because this is very different from what I had when I opened this file and I had this layer, turn off the gray. This is very, very different from where the piece was going. Hugely different. And it really was just sitting down and working out these elements, spending a little time with you guys, talking through it. You know, I think you guys helped me just in terms of being able to talk through my artistic problems. It's almost like you guys are my art therapist. I can sit here, talk out what I'm doing out loud, realize my mistakes, and say, oh, wait, this is what it really needs instead. But yeah, just the fact of being able to go from this thumbnail now, this is really all I need to finish up this piece. And once I mean, yeah, I'm going to go in with more detail, and there'll probably be more contrast and some even darker blues and more edges, but this feels like what I want the cover to feel like. It's got what I need. I can go forward with it. So you guys have helped me by hanging out. So we've been going for about an hour here. If there's any other questions you guys have, let me know. Otherwise, I think that we're going to wrap it up. For me, the next step that is gonna be on this piece is really just, I'll probably save a copy of this file just so I have the green version that I did for, I don't know, whatever reasons, whatever reference I might need. But just on the offhand chance I want to go back there and tweak anything, it'll be good to have it. And then I'll just go in and recolor the background in these tones. And hell, I honestly, not that I don't want to draw in front of you, but I pretty much hope that I'll be done with this issue by the time I'm streaming next week. And at that point, I will probably move into showing you some of my figure drawing work from the past month or two, because I've neglected that trying to finish this issue. Yeah, see this. I'm gonna have to go with let me undo this. I need to go with a lighter blue because it's now in this, even though it's his hair, it's in this lighter region, and I really don't want to screw up the color scheme too much. Yeah, that's something I'll have to play with in terms of him and his dark hair against this bright golden light. Yeah, right in here. This area is going to need some work. So Pavel said he needs to go, and it was nice to pop into the chat with the video, and it was nice for you guys to pop in too. I'm glad you guys are here. Thanks for spending time with me, and as I have said before, if you would like to support this channel, go to patreon.com/Jeremy. For $2 a month, you'll get bonus blog posts. You get early access to my works in progress and see how my comics are developing. At the $5 a month, you will get a bonus live stream once a month. If you'd like to preview some of my comics, read them, check out the work that I'm making, you can go to comics.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to buy some, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. Okay, kids, that's it for now. Go be creative.